The Pokémon brand can be confusing. It's been a staple of Nintendo handhelds ever since the Game Boy, but unlike Mario and Zelda, it's had the flexibility to form a multimedia empire of anime, Hollywood blockbusters, trading cards, action figures, plushies, and so much more. You probably know Game Freak developed the core games, but various other developers have handled spin-offs like Genius Sorority with Pokémon Colosseum, or Bandai Namco with new Pokémon Snap. Who or what is Creatures, and what do they do? It's time to clear up the major aspects of the Pokémon series' legal standing and see who actually owns and leads the franchise. Pokémon as a franchise is no small undertaking. Each generation you've got to form a whole new bunch of Pokémon, a whole new world for them, some new mechanics, make a game, make an anime, make trading cards. There's so many aspects to the series. So can you imagine just how hard this was for the very first game? To understand who owns Pokémon and what exactly they do, I think it's important to understand the history. So let's very quickly recap how it all began. This all started in 1981 with a struggling company called Game Freak. Now, Game Freak did not begin as a video game developer, they were an unofficial magazine. Satoshi Tajiri had a strong passion for all things gaming, but back then, there were no official publications dedicated to the medium. It was tough to share this passion with the world, and so Tajiri became the change he wanted to see. Game Freak magazine began its life as a handwritten issue that was photocopied and then stapled together by hand. It was a small business, but it soon began to expand and caught the attention of Ken Sugimori, who'd become the magazine's illustrator. You may know him today as the lead designer of the original 151 Pokémon. As the magazine became more popular, Tajiri and Sugimori began to understand what made video games good and what made them bad. They wanted to use their expertise to step out of editorial work and step into full-on development. But to develop games for the Famicom, they'll need two very important things: funds and connections, and they lacked both. But with baby steps, they'll continue to grow Game Freak as a developer. So their debut title instead happened under a studio with existing connections, Namco. This was Mendel Palace, published by Namco in Japan for the Famicom and Hudson Soft over in the States for the NES. It was a simple arcade-style game about flipping tiles to defeat enemies, and it was a moderate success, enough to keep cash flowing for Game Freak and to move on to their next big step. While Tajiri and Sugimori played Dragon Quest II, they became frustrated when Sugimori found himself with 2 rare item drops, while Tajiri couldn't find a single one. If only there were a way to trade one over to another copy. And that's when something clicked: the Game Boy link cable. An idea started forming for a single-player game with major social elements, both cooperative and competitive. Concepts were quickly drawn up, and Game Freak ended up presenting their game directly to Nintendo, and they were interested. Nintendo agreed to publish what would become Pokémon. But Pokémon wouldn't materialize for 6 long years. The cash stopped flowing within Game Freak, and things were starting to look a little dire. The company had to make some smaller projects to continue to fund the development of Pokémon, like Smart Ball with Sony and Pulseman with Sega. With Pokémon taking so long and money being so short, staff turnover was becoming increasingly more common, and Game Freak needed help. Tajiri would begin forming a close relationship with Ape Incorporated, who many Earthbound fans will find very familiar. The legendary Shigesato Itoi would further develop Tajiri's contacts within Nintendo while tightening their experience with game development. This landed them the job for the Game Boy puzzle game, Yoshi. Nintendo would also work with Game Freak to create Mario and Wario for the Super Famicom. But even with all these titles and connections under their belt, Pokémon was simply too big. Game Freak couldn't pay its employees, and even Tajiri wasn't getting anything out of his work. This seemed like a dead end for the company. But Ape Incorporated would once again come to the rescue, under a different name. After wrapping up development on Earthbound, Ape Incorporated, as it was known, completely disbanded, and quickly returned under a new name, Creatures. Many staff from Ape returned, like Tsunokaze Ishihara, who was now CEO of the company. Even the late Satoru Iwata would assist in the creation of Creatures. Despite working at HAL, Iwata was a huge contributor to Mother 2 and was largely responsible for the game's shipping at all. Iwata fixed massive bugs that set back an already troubled development. So despite being at HAL, he of course had a stake in the company finding brand new life. Creatures hadn't shipped any titles, but they were in a very healthy position of cash flow. And with their relationship already established with Game Freak from the days of Ape, Creatures decided to keep Game Freak flowing, but in return for 1/3 of the Pokémon copyright. This left a triangle of 3 incredibly close companies who had all worked together and formed healthy relationships. Before it even shipped, Pokémon was owned 33% by Creatures, 33% by Game Freak, and 33% by Nintendo. Game Freak of course handled the development, Nintendo handled distribution and marketing, while for now Creatures were mostly just a major investor. That said, they would contribute towards the franchise in major ways in the future. Despite Pokémon being a massive project with 6 years of development, expectations were rather low. The Game Boy was 7 years old, and the N64 was set to launch that very year. Yet, cheap aging hardware was exactly what this game needed. Kids from around the world could easily get their hands on Pokémon, and in no time, Pokémon Red and Green not only found massive success, but extend the life of the Game Boy and change the multiplayer landscape as we know it. Pokémon Red and Blue would launch internationally and again be huge. This was big, but the writing was on the wall. Many expected the Pokémon bubble to burst at any moment. Was this just the latest fad?
Just how long will this fad last? Retailers hope well into the holiday shopping season.
To keep momentum going, Pokémon ballooned into many different mediums. A manga would launch, and trading cards, and an anime series, and the anime series was so big that a brand new version of the game would come with more ties to the anime. Nintendo helped maintain this growth by getting some of their own partners and internal studios working on spin-offs. HAL Labs would develop Pokémon Snap, Nintendo Software Technology, Pokémon Puzzle League, even Nintendo's very own EAD would pump out Pokémon Stadium. Creatures, on the other hand, would aid development and perform a very important task they still do to this very day: 3D modeling. Making 151 3D models in the late 90s was a big ask. It's still a big ask, and we're about to go over 1,000. And so every single 3D Pokémon, whether they appeared in Pokémon Stadium, XD Gale of Darkness, Battle Revolution, or any 3D mainline game, had their model developed by Creatures. The studio's also done a couple of spin-offs themselves, like Pokepark and Detective Pikachu, but their core backbone lies in support. They were also responsible for licensing and were major spearheads of the Pokémon trading card game. So yeah, Creatures are pretty important. But even with all 3 companies working in tandem, it wasn't enough to maintain such an unexpectedly huge brand. In 1998, the Pokémon Center Company was established in a joint venture by Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures. Pokémon Centers are physical retail stores that distribute Pokémon merchandise, and they're still active to this very day. The responsibility for licensing fell under Creatures with Ishihara, but there was simply too much interest for it to be done all alone. They would need to establish an overarching brand to free resources across all 3 companies. And thus, the Pokémon Center Company became the Pokémon Company. In the Iwata Asks for Pokémon Soul Silver and Heart Gold, Satoru Iwata confirms that his first major role as president of Nintendo was establishing the Pokémon Company. Much like the Pokémon trademark itself, the company would also be owned 33% by Nintendo, 33% by Game Freak, and 33% by Creatures, with the Pokémon Company being a separate 4th entity among them. With Nintendo being Nintendo and creative responsibilities being with Game Freak, CEO of Creatures, Ishihara, was chosen as the most natural lead of the Pokémon brand and was appointed CEO of the Pokémon Company. Despite being the man behind everything, Tajiri would begin to take a backseat on development, and starting with the 3rd generation, went from director to executive producer. This led to longtime Game Freak composer, programmer, and co-director Junichi Masuda leading as director into X and Y, and a few remakes, with Shigeru Omori directing everything after that, including Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Violet and Scarlet. Likely to secure further control, Nintendo would begin to buy shares in Creatures, with an estimated 10% ownership. It's not enough to control Creatures, but it may give them a dominating sway within the Pokémon Company. Nintendo play a key role in localization, production, and quality assurance in major titles, in addition to distribution. Still, the Pokémon IP has found itself more flexible than any other Nintendo franchise, making its jump to mobile before any other Nintendo property, and even having official PC software like the Pokémon trading card game online. Having created the entire franchise and sharing equal ownership, it's unlikely Game Freak will ever budge from developing core titles, especially given it's their most lucrative line of work. But Game Freak themselves aren't owned by Nintendo, and they can develop and publish non-Pokémon IP on competing platforms. We've seen this before, like Little Town Hero on PlayStation 4, and Tembo the Badass Elephant, which came to everything apart from the poor Wii U. But designing a brand new generation of Pokémon and a world to inhabit them falls under the responsibility of Game Freak. creatures will then make the 3D models, while the Pokémon Company markets and Nintendo distributes. In the rare case of Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, another developer did take the reins with Ilka. But with Game Freak deep into both Legends Arceus and Violet and Scarlet, this was undoubtedly a decision made from Game Freak themselves. It is possible future remakes can also come from other developers, but don't expect a new generation to fall into the hands of anyone else. So, with a lot of complicated collaborations and partnerships, this little fad has managed to go on for 26 years. No title has reached the incredibly high 31 million units of red, blue, green, and yellow, but the most recent generation Sword and Shield took the throne as the second best performing entry at 24.5 million units. There's many other modern phenomena too, like Pokémon Go. And so today, over 1,000 anime episodes, 42.2 billion cards sold, and one of the most successful merchandising lines has made the Pokémon Company the highest grossing media brand in the world, ahead of Hello Kitty, Mickey Mouse, and Star Wars.